Please give a warm round of applause for Kendra Augustin.
I want to tell a story about my kidney stones. I realize I realize that what I love about stand up or podcast, it's like my opportunity to tell stories that I don't get to share with other people since I never have these deep conversations with my friends because I don't have many friends. So you guys are my friends for tonight. So when I was 22, I woke up one morning with this pain in my side, and I thought it was a back spasm because back in the day I used to get those. So I would move around just to see if it would stop, which is what usually works with back spasms, but this pain didn't stop. And then I realized I was going to have to be like a child, and I have to go to my mom and dad's room and say, Mommy and Daddy, I'm in pain and I don't know what it is. And then when I told them, they were just like, it's probably gas, which is kind of typical of Black and Caribbean parents. They just sort of dismiss your suffering. So I went back to my room, but the pain didn't go away. So I had to go to work that morning. And I also worked with my mother at that time. So I threw up like several times. My mom's like, it's probably not a big deal. So I still had to go to work. And I was like suffering. And I was like, I can't stand. I don't feel comfortable being upright, Mom. And she's like, it's probably not a big deal. And then I threw up at work. I worked at Fort Lauderdale Olive Garden. And there are two things that will get you sent home, and it's throwing up and diarrhea. So when they found out I threw up, they said, okay, she has to leave. So my mom's like, all right, I guess I'll call your dad and he can take you to the hospital. So I went to the hospital, and then the woman said to me, after I told her my pain, she was like, I think you have a kidney stone. And I remember her to this day because no doctor has ever been so precise in diagnosing what the issue is. Like a few weeks ago, I was sick for several weeks, and I went to urgent care 3 times. And the first time I went there, they're like, it's just a cold, it's winter. And then I was like paranoid because I've heard stories about how Black women are sort of considered to be super strong, so they're kind of disregarded in the medical system. And I just like started assuming that's what was happening to me. So when he said, oh, you just have a cold, it's winter, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I work with a lot of people. And he said, okay, that's probably it. Here are some drugs. And I was like, okay. But I felt dismissed. And then I did all these drugs, legal drugs, and none of it worked. And when I have coughs, they're usually something I can like stifle. I can like be presentable in public, pretend I'm not sick for like an hour, but these coughs were consistent and I couldn't stop it. And I was like, this isn't normal. So I went back after having like 3 cough attacks on a Friday, and I said, I think I'm really sick. And they just looked at me like, okay. And then they gave me even more drugs, and I was like, okay, maybe now it'll work. And then it didn't get better for a week. And then I went back again a week later, and they're like, oh, it sounds like you have bronchitis. And I'm like, well, you just said it was a cold. So I think about that woman who like diagnosed my kidney stone immediately, because no one in my life since or before has ever seen me that clearly. And then I got sent into the hospital room, and they gave me drugs. And it was like really great. I felt no pain. And then my issue is that when I'm not suffering, I believe all the suffering I've had before never happened. So I just thought like maybe I'm not in pain. Maybe it was all a lie. That's how I feel about depression as well. I'm much better now. So to me, I've decided that my past life was just an illusion and that I was never sad. And that's kind of how I felt about the kidney stone. And then I went home, and then all the drugs wore off. And then I was in pain again. And the thing about kidney stones is you don't think about them because I don't know, when I watched TV back in like the 2000s, everybody had an appendicitis. So that's what I assumed that I had was like, oh, it's going to be an appendectomy. Somebody's going to have to cut me open. And then kidney stones are like this incredibly brutal thing that doesn't affect a lot of people. And she just kept saying, you're so young to have this. And no one knows why you have kidney stones. They have theories. And they're like, you just have to drink a lot of water. And I don't drink water. I mean, I drink it, but I don't drink it. I don't drink it enough. So, which is why like my skin's dry all the time. So I drank a lot of water for me, like what I could handle, and then the stones never came out. So then I felt like guilty because I was like, I'm trying to drink as much water as I myself can handle for someone who doesn't drink water. And then every day was just crippling pain. And they give you like these drugs, and they're like, these are the strongest drugs we have. I think you're supposed to take them every 4 hours, but I would take them like every like 3 hours and 50 minutes just to be like, I'm not gonna overdose, but I just like as close as I can get to 4 hours without reaching it. And there were 2 days while I had the kidney stones that I wasn't in pain. And one day I went to school, and I felt passable, but still uncomfortable being upright. So the other days were excruciating pain. I missed like an audition at school, but by that time I had become disillusioned with my university. There's a point where you realize that you're never gonna thrive in a place. So when I couldn't make the auditions, I was like, all right, that's fine. It was never meant to be anyway. And then I also had to miss my piano class, which is like the hardest class I've ever had. I remember feeling like I was gonna fail it. And then when my kidney stone happened, I was like, okay, when I come back next week, it'll be fine. They'll give me like a break. And then I came back and it was even harder. I was even more behind than I was. And it was then I knew that I had to drop out of piano class. And by then they gave you like 80% refund. So I was like, it was worth it not to fail. So anyway, back to kidney stones. The one good thing about kidney stones is you lose your appetite. So then you don't feel guilty for not being hungry. I remember my mother brought me KFC and I felt very sad that I couldn't eat it because that's like my favorite thing. But I lost weight because of the kidney stone. So it was like, it was sort of a gift in a way. Yes, I was exactly. And then I finally went back to the doctor and I said to him, the pain is unbearable. I need to get this thing out of me. And he said, okay, maybe we can schedule you in a week. And I said to him, if you don't schedule me as soon as possible, I'm going to jump in front of a bus. And he said, okay, I'll schedule you for 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So it was then I realized that threatening to harm yourself gets doctors interested in helping you. Also, another thing about kidney stones, it taught me why. Like, there's some people when they're older, they are in chronic pain. And sometimes they decide to end their lives, and you're just like, you don't get it until you're like in chronic pain. You realize that this is no way to live. I mean, every day of your life is painful. It's almost like having OCD where it's like it takes over your brain and you can't think about anything else because you're just like suffering. So I had surgery 6 a.m. or no, they called me in at 6 a.m. and then they didn't put me in until 9 a.m. Then they had surgery at 12 p.m. Yeah. And then I remember just talking to them. They asked me a question, and then I woke, and then I was up, and all of a sudden the surgery had happened. There was no grace period of me falling asleep. I just remember talking and then waking up having the thing removed out of me. And it was like a laser blaster thing that they put up your hoo-ha. And then of course, peeing became painful because they put something in you, but I didn't know because we didn't have that conversation about what they were gonna do. I just thought it was like a laser blaster, and then we were done. So a week later, they're like, "Oh, we put a stent in you. Now we have to remove it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I asked them, "Would it be painful?" And they said, It's gonna be a little uncomfortable." And you're like, "Okay." And then it was so painful. And I thought in a sense, it was a little bit as painful as kidney stones, but it just didn't last 6 days. And they just pull it out of you. But I remember feeling free and good when I had the surgery because I wasn't able to eat, and they gave me ginger ale and crackers, and it was the first time I could taste anything, and this is the first time I ever had ginger ale, and I think it's why years later I still think in my head that ginger ale is the cure-all, because that was the first thing I had after surgery, so I figured that must be it. But I'm assuming maybe it's not. So yes, I had the surgery, and it was the first time I could pee freely. And then they told me that I should stop eating things with citrus, but no one knew exactly what caused the issue. So they just gave me a whole list of things I couldn't eat. And then I don't think I changed anything. And I've never had a kidney stone since. So yeah, thank you for listening to my story.